Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mondays with Manny. This is the official start of Mondays with Manny, and I'm your host, Manny Rodriguez. So thank you for joining me today and listening to this video, watching this video. Um, this is going to be a live cast. Unfortunately, we had some difficulties as our first Mondays with Manny. YouTube wasn't functioning for us today. So I decided to go ahead and jump in a Zoom meeting room, record it, and then post it on YouTube after the fact. So it's still considered a live cast because I've invited anyone that's willing to interested in learning and listening. Today, we are going to be talking about strategy and how strategy in organizations happen, what works, what doesn't work, some strategies, some techniques from the world of business and behavioral science that seems to enable strategy to be most effective. Um, I want to give a special thanks to Business Science Magazine, 305 Publishing, the OBM Alliance, and my teammates at Bueno Ventures. Without this, Mondays with Manny would not be happening. So I'm very excited to do this. This is the first time for me doing live casting, providing some information that we think would be very helpful to folks, whether you're an executive, a board member, a director, a managing director, a manager or supervisor, or even a frontline employee looking to make a positive difference in the workplace. We think this would be very valuable information for folks. And every Monday, we're going to toss in different things. Today, we're going to talk about strategy. Some Mondays, we'll talk about teams and team performance. Other things, we might even bring in some artificial intelligence. Who knows? There's lots of things going on in the place of work and in the world of business. And so we want to tackle these kind of challenges, these common problems, and how to tackle them using science. So as I said, today's topic will be on strategy. And what I want to talk about is in regards to kind of various reasons why strategy seems to fail. There's a lot been written about in terms of strategy, why strategy ends up failing for some organizations, things like lack of resources, lack of information, or sometimes the business is simply just outperformed by a competitor who did a better strategy. Now, what makes a successful strategy has a lot to do with a two-part or two components, planning and execution. And typically in the world of behavioral science, it's really the execution where the rubber meets the road, right? Where strategy really comes to life. But there's something to be said about the planning stage. You can't have successful strategy if it's not planned and thought out very well. Now, for today's Monday with Manny, I just want to share with you some specific techniques that I've learned, some resources that are related to those techniques that are available to you. And then if and when we have a live audience, I'll open it up to Q&A. Now, these Mondays with Manny, just for sake of discussion, I just want to mention, they're not very long. We're going to try to make it about 20, 30 minutes in length, give you some cool tips, some techniques, some resources, an abundance of resources out there to help you along your journey in the world of business. So again, if you're an executive, an entrepreneur, a practitioner in the world of change management or behavior change, we think all of these resources and tips are going to be valuable for each and every one of you. I am open to Q&A at the end or afterwards. You can reach me at Manny, Manny, at buenoventures.com. That's my email address, so feel free to shoot me a note if you have any questions following. All right, so back to the topic at hand in regards to strategy. So first resource I want to put your attention to is Harvard Business Review's 10 must-reads on strategy. Now, that may sound like simplistic, okay, so I just went to a default book on strategy. But truth be told, I actually got this book as part of my my required reading material during my doctorate of business administration work that I'm currently finishing up this year at the University of South Florida. And during my DBA program, this book was handed to us as required reading. And what it does is it breaks down the top 10 must-reads on the subject matter of strategy. So just to give you an idea of what's in the book, just going right to the table of context, you have the What is Strategy by Michael Porter, a well-renowned author on the subject matter. There's also another one by Michael Porter, The 5 Competitive Forces That Shape Strategy. Just kind of scrolling down, we have Collins and Porras, Building Your Company's Vision. You might remember those authors from other books. There's another one on the Blue Ocean Strategy, which is another great book. It's actually right over here. Blue Ocean Strategy, accompanied by the Blue Ocean Shift, which is their second book. Um, the one that I want to focus on today, and it's one of the techniques that I've learned along the way as a practitioner, as a manager, that have really helped kind of bridge the gap between planning strategy and executing strategy, is the Balanced Scorecard. And it is one of the chapters in the book by Robert Kaplan and David Norton, who are kind of the founders of the Balanced Scorecard. And the Balanced Scorecard, if you're not familiar with it, there's a lot to be said about the Balanced Scorecard. But in short, you're really trying to take the vision and the mission of the company, get some feedback and learning from history, and apply it to your everyday business from in terms of your strategy and how you execute your strategy. So the reason why it's called a balanced scorecard is because what you're doing is you're taking measures, you're taking key performance indicators, you're taking those key variables, those key performance metrics, and you're putting them all in a scorecard. You're putting them in a format in which you can take your strategy, your strategic initiatives, and you're putting them in a place where you're going to bucket them under one of four variables, one of four buckets of key performance indicators. It's your financial metrics, your internal business processes, your learning and growth metrics, and your customer metrics, right? And that's why it's called a balance. So if you think about a scale, you got some on this side, some on that side, and it balances that out, right? So the book does a nice job. It illustrates it very well. It gives some examples in the chapter, and there's just so much you can read from Kaplan and Norton on the Balanced Scorecard. It's really, really helpful. Now, some have actually broadened the scorecard approach to include other indicators like quality, right? So quality is a big one, especially if you think of the world of healthcare, human services, as well as manufacturing. Quality is very, very important. So quality of products, quality of service. So you can put those kind of key performance indicators in your scorecard. And what I found in my practice was the use of a scorecard almost becomes fundamental in getting success of your strategy. So whatever your strategy is, it's based on data, or it should be based on data. That's what science tells us. The best strategies are based on historical data and forecasting data. And then you use that same data, apply it in a scorecard, and you're managing your day-to-day business, your week-to-week business, your month-to-month business, your quarter-by-quarter business to make sure you're hitting your strategy the way you intended to hit it using data. So the Balanced Scorecard, Harvard Business Review's 10 must reads on strategy. Totally recommend. By the way, ethics are in check. I get no compensation for this. It's just a great, great set of material. The next thing I wanted to provide you is it's kind of along the same line. But when it comes to strategy, if you're a small business entrepreneur, if you're a small business, you're in the startup phase, there's a great set of books by a guy named Gino Wickman. Gino Wickman, I got introduced to him a few years ago while I was working for a health and human service provider. And Gino Wickman wrote a book called Traction, but more importantly, he actually within the book, he describes a methodology that he created called EOS with some colleagues. EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. EOS. And the intention of EOS is to really help startups, small businesses really get honed in on some key systems and processes towards executing their strategy, towards hitting their performance goals. So the cool thing about Traction and EOS, to kind of give you a sense of, one of the key tips and techniques, and it's all predicated on a great deal of business science, is what he calls the Vision Traction Organizer. So this is kind of what it looks like, and I'll kind of walk through it. But what's really cool about it is it always starts with a vision, right? You always start with a vision, your core values. He calls them the core focus areas, right? Which is like your areas of importance of what you're trying to do. Your 10-year target. So he wants your strategy to be long-term, right? So some would call them the big, hairy, audacious goals. Your marketing strategy, because without good marketing, you're not going to get your products and services out there. And then your 3-year picture, right? That's the beginning of your vision. Then to take strategy into execution, that's why it's called the Vision Traction Organizer. Then it goes into the 1-year plan, what they call the rocks, or the key activities to achieve that 1-year plan. And then an issues list. So what issues do we need to resolve that's going to keep us from hitting our goals? This becomes a strategic plan, right? This is your strategic plan moving into your execution plan. So the cool thing about the vision traction organizer is it really just gets everybody on the same page. It organizes everything, and it really brings it from strategy into execution, which is the most important part. So that's Traction by Gino Wickman. He has a number of different books out there in regards to strategy and how to bring it into execution. So for those of you joining me in the live cast, thank you very much for joining me. I'm now still in the recording phase, and we are moving right along. The subject matter just to reintroduce to everybody, the subject matter we are talking about today is strategy and why strategy fails and how to make strategy successful. So just as a quick recap, so why does strategy fail? Lack of resources, lack of information. It might be outperformed by a competitor. And really what makes successful strategy are two components: planning and execution. So in the planning stages, you're really bringing in a whole lot of people to talk about strategy. But the most important part in the planning stage is to make sure you have data and let the data be your guide. So the first thing we talked about, this is just a recap: Harvard Business Review's 10 must reads on strategy, kind of a give all on some of the best things out there on Harvard Business Review's take on strategy. And the thing that we focused on was what's called the Balanced Scorecard by Robert Kaplan and David Norton, Kaplan and Norton. And that Balanced Scorecard is really all about making sure that your metrics, your key performance indicators, and all of those words are very synonymous with one another, in my opinion. But it's really to get those key metrics in a place that's really guiding your strategy and guiding your execution. So the idea of financial metrics, internal business process metrics, learning and growth metrics, and your customer metrics. You're pulling them all together to make sure you're keeping your eye on the proverbial prize. So that's just to orientate people on what we've talked about so far. And then I introduced everybody to Gino Wickman's Traction, which is a great book organizing for the small business entrepreneurs of the world, what's out there in regards to helping everybody stay organized, get focused, get laser focused on strategy into execution. And that's what's called Traction. It's a great book. Now, for those of you that are already in business, that have been around for a number of years, you may be looking to scale, right? You may be looking to grow and scale. That might be part of your strategy. And what's interesting about the growth and scaling is that strategy takes on a whole nother level, right? You got to be innovative. You got to be creative. You got to look for opportunities to take your business to the next chapter, right? The next part of the journey. So the resource that I wanted to pull from, that I want to introduce folks that has helped me and my colleagues in our businesses is what's called Scaling Up, right? By Vern Harnish, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. This was actually introduced to me by a friend of mine named Troy Hoffman out in California, who actually helped with his team grow a business to be very, very successful from the ground up. Multi-million-dollar company out in California doing lots of great things. And he introduced me to Vern Harnish, as well as an old colleague of mine, Darnell Littell. Darnell introduced me to Scaling Up because she's very familiar with Vern Harnish's work. And his whole point here is how to take strategy into execution, always staying focused on the people side of the science, right? So he's very much focused on how to reinforce the right people, how to leverage the right people that have the right strengths, that have the right skills, how to bring the right people into the strategy equation towards execution, towards that ultimate goal of scaling up, right? So I got a question from the audience already, so that's fantastic. So what type of business was it? The type of business for my friend Troy Hoffman, if that's what you're wondering. Could you clarify? Or the type of business that, yeah, it would have been my friend Troy. So yeah, so his company is called Simpluris, and it's a class action lawsuit company, actually. So what they do is they are the administrative arm for lawyers, legal teams, and what have you for class action lawsuits. Pretty cool, right? So he grew that business from the ground up, started with a lot of people behind the scenes trying to do the administrative burden of class action lawsuits, from the mailing to the paperwork, all of that stuff. And now it's grown quite significantly. So great question. Thank you for asking that. So scaling up, if you're in a business that's been around for a number of years and you're looking to grow and scale your business, I recommend scaling up. And the reason I do is similar to traction, similar to Gino Wickman's world. He really walks you through and organizes your strategic plan and organizes it in a way so that it moves from strategy to execution. But again, it's at a bigger scale. So just to give you an idea, he calls it the one-page strategic plan, where it focuses first on the people side of things, both employees, customers, and shareholders. So meaning he wants everybody to start with, what are people's drivers? What's their motivation? What is it that they're asking for? What are they looking for? In the world of behavioral science, this is fantastic, right? Because we want to know what's going to motivate people to work on that strategy or achieve that strategy. Then Mr. Harnish talks about core values and beliefs, the purpose, the why, right? So why are we trying to do this? Some targets, 3 to 5 years, a goal, 1-year goals, then actions. Actions are in there, and then it moves into process. So what are we going to do from a process standpoint? Making, buying, selling, record keeping, like what are all these intricacies in terms of getting the strategy to actually happen? And then he breaks it down. He wants the one-page strategic plan to also break down actions into quarterly actions, quarterly themes and goals, and then who is ultimately accountable for what. And so it's all in there. And this book kind of walks you through all the dynamics of how to fill in this one-page strategic plan. But really important, strategy has 2 components: planning and execution. And that's why I wanted to pull these resources into this discussion for Mondays with Manny. I find that one of the number one failures of any strategy is a good plan, but poor execution. Or sometimes you have a history of great execution, but a poor plan. So if you have the makings of both components, a good plan and solid execution of the plan, then you're really going to hit a home run. So here's what I like to do. I just want to recap the 3 resources that I brought in today. That was the topic I wanted to talk about, was strategy and some key tips and techniques in terms of helping enable your strategy. And as I mentioned before, Mondays with Manny is pretty short. It's 20, 30 minutes in length. And then I open it up to Q&A on the topic. Some Mondays with Manny, I will bring in guest speakers, guest practitioners, some gurus in the field of business and behavior science, and we'll talk about other topics. So today's topic was on strategy. So will there be an email out with all the book links, resources? That's a great question. And the answer should be yes. So I'll say yes. What I'll do is I will, in the recording, so this would be a recording, and I'll post it up on YouTube and on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I'll include all the resources that I referenced, and links to those resources as well. And again, my ethics are in check. I get no royalties or benefits financially from these authors or these book publishers. I'm simply an avid fan, right? So great question from the audience here. And as far as an email out, my email address is Manny, MANNY, at Bueno Ventures, BUENO Ventures, VENTURES.com. So Manny at buenoventures.com. And yes, great point. So from the audience also, there was an email or a sign-up sheet for Mondays with Manny, and there was supposed to be a reminder that was supposed to be sent for today's session, but unfortunately, it just I guess it got stuck in the whirlpool of technology. So my apologies for that. But we will be doing that going forward for every other Monday coming forward. Also, I wanted to apologize for the YouTube channel issues we've had. We had some technical difficulties, which is why I had to move it to Zoom. But fortunately, Zoom, I can record and take some questions and then post it later. So it's still considered a live cast. It's just private live. So I think moving forward, I'm going to test YouTube again. And if it doesn't work before next Monday, we're going to do YouTube. So I will. So I'm glad. For the audience member, thank you for signing up. You will be getting emails moving forward, and that way you'll get reminders, links, and all that stuff. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So without further ado, that's really the end of Mondays with Manny today. We're going to wrap it up on the subject matter of strategy. We might even call this strategy part one because strategy just has so much that you could talk about. And I could not do it justice in 20, 30 minutes, but I wanted to give it a shot anyway. So without further ado, that's the end of Mondays with Manny. I'll open it up to Q&A for the audience here. So again, my name is Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining Mondays with Manny. A special thanks to Business Science Magazine, 305 Publishing, the OBM Alliance, and my teammates at Bueno Ventures. So that's now the way I will end Mondays with Manny. And thank you very much. And I will see you next time. And for the audience, the live audience, stick around if you have any Q&A.